Imagine standing in the middle of an ancient Roman forum. Merchants trade goods, citizens discuss politics, and gold coins exchange hands under the blazing Mediterranean sun. That gold, shining, heavy, eternal, is the lifeblood of the empire. Now, fast forward 2,000 years. The forum has moved online. The gold is no longer heavy. It has no shape, no smell, no touch. It exists as code, invisible yet powerful. They call it crypto. And just like Rome's gold once did, it promises to change the world. But will it? Or is this new digital gold merely another myth, destined to rise and fall like the empires before it? Aye, the birth of a new empire. Every empire begins with belief. Belief in a system, a leader, or an idea. Rome was built on the belief that the world could be united through strength and law. Bitcoin was built on the belief that the world could be freed through code and mathematics. When Bitcoin was first mined in 2009, its creator, the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto, wrote a message in its first block. The Times, 03 Jan 2009 Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. That message was more than just a timestamp. It was a rebellion. A silent declaration that the world's financial empires, the banks, the governments, the institutions, had failed to protect the people. And just like the citizens of Rome once trusted gold more than their rulers, people now began to trust cryptography more than central banks. In those early years, Bitcoin was not a currency. It was a philosophy. A whisper among digital rebels, libertarians, and dreamers who believed in a future without borders or kings, where every person could hold their own wealth, untouchable by any empire. But all revolutions eventually seek structure, and every idea that challenges power eventually becomes power itself. 2. The rise of digital gold. As Bitcoin spread across the digital world, something unexpected happened. It started behaving like gold. It was scarce. Only 21 million coins would ever exist. It was mined, not from the earth, but from energy and computation. It was portable, divisible, and independent. In short, it became the modern version of ancient Rome's gold coins, a store of value for the digital age. Suddenly, investors, institutions, and even governments began to pay attention. They saw what once looked like a hacker's experiment turning into a potential global asset. Bitcoin was no longer a joke. It was becoming digital gold. But gold alone did not build Rome. Rome thrived because it created a network, a system that connected millions of people under a shared belief. And so too did crypto evolve. Ethereum appeared, introducing smart contracts, a new kind of law written not on paper but in code. Other cryptocurrencies followed, each promising faster transactions, better privacy, or global efficiency. The world was watching a new empire of digital wealth rise before its eyes. And like Rome, it promised freedom, prosperity, and progress. But here's the irony of history. Every empire that promises freedom eventually creates new forms of control. The illusion of decentralization, Rome promised equality under its law, but power always concentrated in the hands of the few. Crypto promised decentralization, freedom from the system, but soon power began to centralize again. Large mining pools began to dominate the Bitcoin network. Exchanges like Binance and Coinbase became new financial hubs. And while the blockchain itself remained open, control shifted quietly toward a few giants. Just like the Roman Senate once ruled over the masses. Even the dream of anonymity faded. Governments learned how to trace blockchain activity, exchanges started demanding identification, and the Wild West of crypto slowly turned into a regulated playground. The myth of total freedom began to crack, and yet the belief persisted. Because belief, not truth, is what sustains every empire. People didn't stop using gold when Rome fell. They simply transferred their faith to another power. Likewise, even when crypto's flaws became clear, believers held on, convinced that the code itself would eventually fix what humanity could not. In that sense, crypto became more than an asset. It became a religion. And like any religion, it carried both prophets and false gods. For the new Caesars of finance. Every revolution eventually produces its own emperors. In crypto, these emperors wore hoodies instead of crowns, but their power was no less vast. Elon Musk could move entire markets with a single tweet. Sam Bankman-Fried built an empire that rivaled nations before it collapsed overnight. And behind the scenes, thousands of influencers, whales, and developers became the new aristocracy of digital wealth. The crypto empire mirrored Rome in another way too, expansion. New tokens, new blockchains, new promises of wealth flooded the world. From NFTs to DeFi, the empire expanded faster than anyone could understand. People weren't just investing, they were gambling on the future of civilization. They believed crypto would replace banks, governments, and even money itself. But history is cruel. Every empire believes it will last forever, until one day it doesn't. The fall that never ends. In 2021, Bitcoin reached an all-time high. Crypto millionaires threw lavish parties. Tweets declared, "The old system is dead." But just a year later, the empire began to tremble. Luna collapsed, FTX imploded, prices crashed, fortunes evaporated, and suddenly, people began to ask the same question that haunted every fallen empire. Was it all built on belief or on illusion? Rome fell not because of a single battle, but because of slow decay, corruption, greed, overreach. Crypto, too, began to show signs of the same disease. Too many projects chasing hype instead of innovation. Too many promises, too little substance. Too much faith, not enough foundation. But here's where the story takes a twist. Because even after Rome fell, its ideas lived on in architecture, language, and law. And even after Bitcoin crashed, its technology remained. Blockchain, decentralization, transparency. The empire may fall, but the blueprint endures. The eternal city of code. Perhaps crypto isn't Rome, at least not yet. Perhaps it's closer to the early republic. Chaotic, idealistic, and still defining its destiny. Rome didn't become an empire overnight. It took centuries of war, reform, and reinvention. And maybe crypto's journey is following a similar path. The collapse of bad actors, the regulation by governments, the rise of stable projects. All these could be seen not as signs of death, but of evolution. The ashes of FTX and Luna might be the ruins upon which a stronger, wiser digital system is built. Because Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is digital gold. In the coming decades, crypto might transform again. It might merge with artificial intelligence, integrate into global finance, or become invisible, running quietly beneath the systems of the world. One day, we may no longer call it crypto. It might just become money. And when that happens, historians might look back and say, this was the moment civilization minted its next Rome. Not from stone and marble, but from algorithms and trust. 7th, lessons from the empire. If there's one lesson history teaches us, it's that no system is immune to collapse. Not Rome, not gold, not the dollar, not even Bitcoin. Every empire, whether forged in metal or code, eventually meets the limits of human nature. Greed, fear, corruption, division. But there's something else, too. Something more powerful than collapse, adaptation. Rome fell, but humanity kept building. Crypto crashed. But the idea of decentralized value continues to evolve. Maybe the real story isn't about whether crypto is the next Rome. Maybe it's about what happens after this empire rises and falls. What knowledge, what innovation, what belief it leaves behind. Because gold didn't vanish after Rome. It became a universal measure of trust for centuries. And crypto, too, might become the foundation for a new kind of trust. One not controlled by any emperor or bank, but by code itself. Fate, the myth that keeps us dreaming. So could digital gold be the next Rome? Maybe. But not because it conquers the world, because it captures the imagination. Rome was an idea that outlived its walls. Crypto is an idea that outlives its crashes. Both are myths in motion. Part truth, part dream, part warning. Every time someone buys their first Bitcoin, writes their first smart contract, or questions the fairness of the financial system, they're continuing the same story. The story of humans trying to build something eternal in a world that always changes. Perhaps that's why crypto exists. Not to replace Rome, but to remind us of it. To remind us that power, no matter how decentralized, always carries risk. To remind us that belief, even when misplaced, can move mountains. And to remind us that every empire, physical or digital, begins with one idea. That we can create something bigger than ourselves. And maybe, just maybe, this time we'll get it right. The myth of Rome still echoes in our laws and our cities. The myth of crypto echoes in our networks and our dreams. And between them lies the timeless truth of humanity. We build empires not because we must, but because we believe we can.